Welcome to the Menga podcast, your ultimate dose of vulnerability. We're going to be taking a deep dive today into a specific vulnerability, one that I think really highlights how even seemingly harmless features can have pretty serious security implications.
For sure.
We're talking about CVE 2024-39165. Now, you might not be a cybersecurity expert, but I bet you've used software with features like the one affected by this vulnerability.
Yeah, absolutely. I think most people have.
Right.
And today we're going to kind of dive into the world of QR codes.
Okay.
Specifically, a vulnerability that was found in a library called JpGraph Professional.
JpGraph Professional.
Yeah. It's used by PHP developers to generate charts and graphs.
Charts and graphs, okay.
And it also includes a demo application for making QR codes.
Okay, so that sounds like
pretty standard, right?
pretty standard. Yeah, QR codes are everywhere these days. So
Exactly.
I'm sure a lot of our listeners have used them without even thinking twice. So what's the catch? What makes this particular QR code generator so dangerous?
Well, the vulnerability lies in how this demo application handles user input.
Okay.
So it doesn't properly sanitize the data that's entered for the file name and the data that's embedded in the QR code.
Okay.
In simpler terms, it's not checking for potentially harmful code that someone might try to sneak in.
Okay, so someone could create a QR code that looks totally innocent,
Right.
but actually has malicious code hidden inside.
Exactly.
That's kind of unsettling.
It is, yeah. So let's say someone creates a QR code using this vulnerable application.
Okay.
And they name the file maliciouscode.php.
Maliciouscode.php.
Right. And then they inject some harmful code into the data that the QR code is supposed to store.
Right.
Now, when someone scans that QR code or even just accesses the file,
Oh, wow.
that malicious code could be executed on their system.
So it's not just about the person who scans the code being at risk.
Right.
Like, what kind of damage could this code do to their system?
Well, this is where it gets really concerning because CVE 2024-39165 is rated as critical.
Critical.
Which means it could allow an attacker to execute code remotely on the affected server.
Okay.
So imagine that server hosts sensitive information, customer data, financial records. The possibilities for damage are huge.
Yeah.
We could be talking about data theft, installation of malware, disruption of services, all stemming from a seemingly simple QR code generator.
Yeah, it's amazing how such a small thing can have such a massive impact.
It is.
And, it's easy to think, well, I don't build websites, so I'm not affected.
Right.
But this vulnerability highlights a broader point.
Yeah.
A vulnerability in one piece of software, even something like a QR code generator,
Right.
can have this ripple effect.
Totally.
It reminds us that security is everyone's responsibility.
Absolutely. And it really shines a light on the fact that vulnerabilities can crop up in these really unexpected places.
Yeah.
And it emphasizes the importance of security best practices throughout the entire software development lifecycle.
Developers need to be really vigilant about validating user input and sanitizing data to prevent these types of attacks.
Okay.
It's like building a house. You wouldn't leave the back door wide open, would you?
Great analogy. So what happened after this vulnerability was discovered? Did they fix it?
So Synacktiv, the cybersecurity firm that found this vulnerability, responsibly disclosed it to JpGraph, the company behind the software.
Okay.
However, at the time of the report, there wasn't an immediate patch available. Their main recommendation was to delete the entire demo application folder,
Oh, wow.
since it's not essential to the core functionality of JpGraph.
Okay.
It's like removing that unlocked back door to prevent anyone from just walking in.
That seems like a pretty drastic measure.
It is, yeah.
What if someone actually needs to use that QR code generator?
Right.
What other options are there?
Well, that's where things get a bit tricky.
Okay.
Deleting the vulnerable component is the most straightforward solution.
Yeah.
But it might not always be feasible.
In those cases, implementing stricter access controls could be an alternative.
Okay.
So you could restrict access to the QR code generator to only authorize users who have a legitimate need for it.
Okay.
Think of it like adding a security system to that back door. Now only people with the right code can get in.
So it's about minimizing the potential attack surface by limiting who has access to the vulnerable feature in the first place.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's not just about access control. You can also layer on other security measures like input validation and sandboxing.
Right.
It's about creating a multi-layered defense system to mitigate the risk, even if the vulnerability still exists.
This all makes sense, but it also highlights the fact that there's not always a quick and easy fix when it comes to security.
Right.
It's an ongoing process of identifying, assessing, and mitigating risks.
Absolutely.
It's about being proactive and thinking ahead rather than just reacting after something bad has already happened.
You hit the nail on the head.
Okay.
And it's also a shared responsibility. Developers need to prioritize secure coding practices. Companies need to have robust security protocols. And users need to be aware of the risks and take appropriate precautions.
Right.
We all have a part to play in building a safer digital world.
Well said.
Yeah.
So what can our listeners do to be more proactive about their own security, especially in light of vulnerabilities like this one? What are some practical steps they can take to protect themselves?
Well, one of the most important things is to stay informed.
Okay.
Keep up with security news and be aware of the latest threats. You don't need to become a cybersecurity expert overnight.
Right.
But just having a basic understanding of the current landscape can really help you make more informed decisions.
So do you have any recommendations for good sources of information?
Yeah.
For those of us who aren't security professionals?
Absolutely. Websites like Krebs on Security and ThreatPost are great places to start.
Okay.
They provide really clear and concise explanations of security issues.
Okay.
Without getting too bogged down in technical jargon. They also offer practical tips on how to protect yourself.
Great. So reading security news is a good way to stay in the loop.
Yeah.
What else can our listeners do to boost their security posture?
Be mindful of the software you use.
Okay.
And make sure it's from a reputable source. Look for software that have a good track record of security and is regularly updated.
Okay.
It's kind of like choosing a car.
Yeah.
You'd probably feel safer in a car with a high safety rating.
Right.
And a good maintenance history, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to drive a car that's known for having faulty brakes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just like you wouldn't ignore a recall notice for your car,
Right.
don't ignore those software update notifications.
Oh, yeah.
They often contain important security patches
Yeah.
that can protect you from known vulnerabilities.
So those pesky update reminders are actually trying to help us.
They are your friends, trust me.
Who knew?
And while we're on the topic of being proactive,
Okay.
let's talk about passwords. Oh, yeah.
I know it can be a pain,
Yeah.
but using strong and unique passwords for each of your online accounts is absolutely crucial.
Right.
Think of it like this. If you use the same key for your house, your car, and your office,
Yeah.
it only takes one key to access everything.
Right.
Not ideal.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. That's definitely asking for trouble.
Yeah.
But with so many accounts these days,
I know.
it's hard to remember all those different passwords.
I hear you. That's where a password manager comes in handy.
Password manager.
It's a tool that generates and stores all your passwords securely. So you only need to remember one master password.
Oh.
It takes the hassle out of password management and makes it much easier to stay secure.
Password managers are a game changer.
Yeah.
I can't believe I went so long without one.
I know, right?
So staying informed, using strong passwords, and keeping software updated.
Yep.
Those are some great takeaways.
Absolutely.
Any other practical tips you can share?
Be cautious about the information you share online.
Especially on social media.
Right.
The more you put out there,
Yeah.
the greater the risk of it falling into the wrong hands.
Right.
Ask yourself, do I really need to share this information publicly?
It's a good reminder that not everything needs to be blasted out to the entire world.
Exactly. And
Right.
be wary of connecting with people you don't know online.
Okay.
Not everyone is who they claim to be,
Right.
and scammers are always looking for new targets.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
We often talk about securing our devices and accounts,
Right.
but we don't always think about the security risks
Yeah.
associated with our online interaction.
Totally.
It's like being careful about locking your doors,
Yeah.
but then inviting strangers into your home.
Precisely. And speaking of adding layers of security,
Okay.
enable two-factor authentication, 2FA, whenever it's available.
Two-factor authentication.
Yeah, it adds an extra layer of protection to your accounts,
Okay.
making it much harder for attackers to gain access, even if they have your password. Think of it as a security guard checking your ID
Okay.
before letting you into a restricted area.
Right.
Makes it much harder for unauthorized people to get in.
2FA is such a simple but effective security measure.
It is.
It's like adding a deadbolt to your front door.
Yeah.
It just makes sense.
Totally.
All these tips are really helpful.
Yeah.
But I know some of our listeners might be thinking, this all sounds great, but what if I'm not a techie? Is there anything else I could do to stay safe online?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
One of the most important things you can do is to be aware of phishing scams.
Okay. Phishing scams.
Phishing is when attackers try to trick you into giving them sensitive information,
Okay.
like your passwords or credit card details.
Right.
They often do this through emails or messages that look like they're from a legitimate source,
Okay.
like your bank or a trusted website.
So it's about being skeptical and not trusting everything you see online.
Exactly.
Mm.
Don't click on any links or open any attachments in emails or messages unless you're absolutely sure they're legitimate.
Okay.
If something seems suspicious,
Yeah.
take a moment to double-check the sender's address.
Okay.
Hover over any links to see the full URL.
Okay.
And be wary of any requests for personal information.
So it's all about being a bit more cautious and using our common sense?
Precisely.
Okay.
And if you ever receive a suspicious email or message,
Yeah.
don't be afraid to report it to the appropriate authorities.
Okay.
Your vigilance can help protect others from falling victim to these scams.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Reporting suspicious activity can help break the cycle
Exactly.
and prevent others from getting hurt.
Right.
It's like seeing someone drop their wallet and picking it up for them.
Yeah.
A small act of kindness that can have a big impact.
Exactly. We all have a responsibility to look out for each other in the digital world.
This has been an incredibly insightful conversation about practical security tips.
It has.
I feel like I've learned so much,
Yeah.
and I'm sure our listeners have too. So to wrap things up for our listeners, stay informed, be mindful of the software you use, practice good password hygiene,
Yeah.
and be cautious about what you share online.
Right.
And most importantly, remember that security is not a destination.
It's a journey.
It's an ongoing journey.
Remember, everyone, security is a journey, not a destination. Stay curious out there and stay safe.